Welcome, everybody, to our July 13th, Tuesday evening chat with two rabbis. Tonight, I have the honor of introducing Rabbi Barry Silver, who is our rabbi of L'Dor Va-Dor. And our guest rabbi tonight is Rabbi Loring Frank, who I think I accidentally muted, and I didn't mean to do that. So with that, take it away, gentlemen. We're going to be talking about the beginning of Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, and welcome, gentlemen, and everybody else.
Thank you, Sharon. That's an awesome background you have there, Sharon. The natural beauty is spectacular, and I'm glad you're getting a chance to get away and enjoy it, and also sharing it with us. And Rabbi Frank, I appreciate your sharing the beauty from your father, who is a gifted artist and had many wonderful talents and created his own sanctuary. And you're taking after him and also beautifying our discussion tonight. So thank you very much. And I'm sure you also—
Rabbi Silver.
Let me just let people know that in the past, we have had Rabbi Tzvi Khan, an Orthodox rabbi. And we're going from one extreme to the other because Loring Frank is very unorthodox. I don't think that anyone, no one would ever accuse him of being orthodox in any sense at all. So we're going from one extreme to the other. And I did tell Rabbi Frank that we're going to be very gentle on him. So if he says something that we disagree with, I'm asking all the other people not to be too hard on him and don't give him a hard time, because I told him this would be a nice, friendly discussion. So I know some of you have a reputation for being a little difficult and divisive, but I'm hoping everybody will be on their best behavior, and I will try to be also. So tonight, we are going to speak about the book of Deuteronomy, which we're starting this Friday night. If you dust off your Bibles, you can find this as the 5th book of the Torah, or if you have a Hebrew Bible, it'll be called Devarim. If you want to go into a little more detail and see some awesome music, you are welcome to join Congregation L'Dor Va-Dor at our Shabbat celebration by link. You can click onto the link by going to our website, ledorvador.org, and you'll find some wonderful music and inspiring words, reading from the Torah, courtesy of Sharon Leibovitz, who is our master technician who puts this together.
Along with Arnie.
Along with Arnie, yes, I follow her instructions. They wind me up. They tell me what to say. And if I say the wrong thing, they send it back and say, try again. If I say the wrong thing, they send it back a few more times till I get it right. And then we have a really wonderful Shabbat celebration. So I wanted to speak about Devarim, or Deuteronomy, and also have Rabbi Frank share some of his thoughts about it too. Rabbi Frank, if it's okay with you, since Tzvi Khan isn't here, can you speak from an Orthodox perspective and try to tell us what Rabbi Khan might have said? Maybe you can just share with us his point of view, and then if you want, you can share yours as well. Would you like to go first, Rabbi Frank, as far as speaking about Deuteronomy, or would you like me to do so?
You can speak. I just want to mention, I can defend myself really well amongst fellow Jews. You know what I mean? I deal with a lot of tourists, you know, when it comes to Judaism, but you and your congregation are Torahists. So I have to be a little more knowledgeable at my brushing up my Torah. So you all are Torahists, not tourists to the synagogue, right?
That's correct. Well, actually, Rabbi Frank's father and my father were both very controversial, and they both received a lot of flack. So Rabbi Frank also is used to controversy, so he shouldn't have any problems here tonight. So let's talk about the Torah passage. This is the 5th book of the Bible, Deuteronomy. In Hebrew, it's called Devarim. Devarim has 2 meanings, and the 2 meanings really tell us quite a bit about the Hebrew language, perhaps. Devar means a thing. In Hebrew, if somebody says thank you, they say todah rabah. If you want to say you're welcome, you say alo davar. Lo means no, and it's like, it's nothing. It's kind of like in Spanish, you say muchas gracias, you say de nada. Nada means nothing, it's nothing. So lo davar means nothing. Davar means a thing or something, and Devarim is the masculine plural, meaning things. But Devar also means a word, which tells us something interesting about the Hebrew language.
There we go. Now we're all set.
It tells us that words have power, even though they are just letters put together. They're actually things, and they have great power, and they are converted and materialized into very powerful things. In fact, in English, the word, if you have the word word and you put an S in front of it, you get sword. So it becomes something very powerful. Words can be used as a weapon. They can also be used to confer blessings and to encourage people. So Devarim is a very interesting word in that it has this double entendre or double meaning. Devarim in English is Deuteronomy, which is translated different ways. It's very often translated the second law. The word deuter is related to the English word TWO. The T morphed into a D, the W morphed into the U, and the O became an E, but deuter means the second time around. Moses is a great teacher. He's called Moshe Rabbeinu. And every teacher knows that you have to repeat. You have to constantly remind the students of what happened. So he gives a rendition of what happened for the last 40 years. He's speaking to the Jews as they're about to enter the promised land. They've completed their wandering in the wilderness. They're about to enter. Moses can't, and he's giving them a little review. The problem for the literalists is that in his review, he goes back and says what happened before, and there's discrepancies and differences all over the place. You could say, well, he was kind of old then, his memory wasn't so good. But if God's writing all this, then God's memory supposedly would be good. So it's kind of hard to reconcile some of these things. But one of the things that he's reviewing is that the Jewish people sent out scouts to the promised land, and 10 of them came back and said, forget about it. And 2, Joshua and Caleb, said, no, we can do it. And they said, we shall overcome. And that became the motto for the civil rights movement. We shall overcome. He also talks about the beginnings of democracy when he said, it's too much for me to take care of everybody. I can't handle all the disputes. So God tells him in one version, or he comes up with it in other versions, that they should divide up the power. And so he appoints leaders of hundreds and 50s and 10s and judges and elders, and they all help adjudicate the disputes. Earlier in the Torah, this idea was Jethro's. It was his father-in-law's idea. His father-in-law said, Moses, this is too much what you're doing. Divide up the power. But now when he's recounting it, Jethro didn't make it. And now this is like the people's idea or God's idea or his idea. Jethro is kind of eclipsed. There's a lot of other things that are reviewed in this passage. But one other thing I'll just mention is that historians think that Deuteronomy was a later addition to the other 4 books, and it came in after the Babylonian exile when the Jews returned from Babylonia, somewhere around the year 450 to 400 BCE. They think that Deuteronomy materialized and then it got added to the canon. We're not really sure about that, but there's a lot of good reasons to think that occurred. Rabbi Frank, I will turn it over to you. Yeah, if I said anything you disagree with, we want to hear about it. And if you say anything you agree with, share that, or any of your thoughts of your own, it's all yours.
I agree with everything you said, nothing to disagree with. I have a little point of interest from the in the background, so to speak. My middle name is Jethro. And does anyone know of a Jewish person by the name of Jethro? I put it out to the congregation. Does anyone know? So why would a rabbi, my father, choose a, quote, non-Jewish name to name his firstborn and only son? That's my middle name.
Probably that was you were born the week of the passage of Yitro.
That's right. I was born on February 6th, which is the Torah reading of Yitro, which is Moses' father-in-law. So basically what you said, Barry, was 100% accurate. Of course, I'm not here to dispel any of the things that we're speaking about, but there's a little side story to that also. Being that my middle name is Jethro, I've researched a lot about Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. And supposedly, one of the main reasons, he had an ulterior motive of having Moses divide up the work and spread it out amongst all the communities, kind of like what we do today. Our country is based upon the president and the vice president, and then Senate and the House, and then you have mayors of the cities and governors and every senators of the states, dividing out all the responsibilities, if you will. Jethro said, listen, Moses, you're a fine man, you're doing great, but you're not devoting enough time with my daughter, with your wife. And I want you to spend more time with her. So why not divide up some of the laws and the rules that you're making and taking on all the cases, like Rabbi Silver takes on all the cases, he sends it out once in a while, refers them out to different people. So Moses took the idea and he divided up all the lawmaking, if you will, to other people. That way he had more time to spend with his wife, Zipporah, right?
Right.
And Zipporah, there's a little story about Zipporah too, I'm sure you know about. Zipporah was not Jewish. Isn't that right? She was not, there really wasn't Judaism, she was not an Israelite. She was a Midianite who's a darker skin color type people. So Moses' brother was upset that who he married. He said, you married someone that's not even part of our tribe. She's not even white, she's dark skinned. How could you do that? And Moses heard also from his sister Miriam, how could you marry a woman that's not part of us? She's dark skinned and we don't like that. So Moses turned to God and he prayed, if you will. And Moses learned that he should turn the other cheek, to not be bothered by someone's criticism, particularly his own brother and sister. So he turned it over to God, and God works in miraculous ways. As this was happening, Moses starts to ascend in power, and his brother Aaron, who's the older brother, who should have the power, started to descend. Moses' sister Miriam, her skin began to turn a different color. What color did her skin turn? What would you think?
White.
Pardon?
White.
White. You say what? Did someone say black?
No.
Or darker?
No.
Well, most people would say it turned darker because she was criticizing Moses's wife, and maybe God would say, okay, you don't like black, I'll make you real black. But instead, God said, you don't like dark skin? Okay, then I'll make you white. You already are white, but I'll make you even whiter. And her skin began to turn a different color, almost like it was a leprosy. And she was banned from the colony, banned from the community, and placed into like a leper colony, if you will. And Moses forgave her, and he said a prayer, which is in the Torah. Barry, you know the prayer, the shortest prayer in the Torah. What is that prayer?
Refuana.
Which means what?
Heal her, please.
The shortest prayer in the Torah, Moses said, heal my sister Miriam, or heal her, please. No long stories, no long prayers. But why did his prayer work? Was it the words that he said that made it work? Why did his prayer work? Why? How can we get our prayers to be working or blessed or whatever, to be an affirmation of faith? How could it be? Any reason why he could say a couple words and it would work, and some people are praying for hours and praying that they work? What's the reason why Moses' prayer worked?
Well, what's your reason?
It says he said with conviction. He prayed with conviction, a real, not just words spewing out, but words of conviction. So I pray that when Rabbi Silver or myself or other rabbis, or even you, when you speak words that are meaningful to you, you say them with conviction and a feeling of kavanah, spirituality.
You know, that's a great story. It also helps to refute those who oppose intermarriage and interracial marriage. Moses intermarried, and so if you believe in the laws of Moses, then intermarriage is perfectly kosher. And those people who condemn intermarriage are actually violating the laws of Moses. And in the story, which I don't take literally, but God's indicating his disdain for someone who would criticize people who
One of his favorites.
who fall in love with other people. So he struck her with leprosy. And it was a very, very, very quick prayer. But some people think the reason why the prayer was granted also is because he wasn't praying for himself. She had just insulted him and was criticizing him, and he had the magnanimity to pray for her after she just insulted him. So he was truly a heartfelt prayer with no personal motive behind it. Usually people pray for something for themselves, but that was a totally selfless prayer.
And the other thing is having your own brother and sister criticizing you, which usually happens in the family, more so than outsiders. He turned the other cheek. He just let it go. So it's a nice affirmation for us all to live by also. It's a beautiful story. And Moses also reviews the 10 commandments, right? In this particular Torah reading. And my favorite commandment, and it's the one that I know Barry follows distinctly. I do the same. I try to. It's the 5th commandment, to love and honor your mother and your father, to honor them. And it's the only commandment that has a reward attached to it. And what's the reward? The reward, when you honor your mother and your father, you're blessed with longevity and with prosperity. It says it in the 5th commandment in a roundabout way. Right, Barry? You can finish up the actual meaning. You'll be blessed with generations, L'Dor Va-Dor, of people, family members, and you'll be blessed with the land of milk and honey, or prosperity. So any comments from anyone? And I'd love to hear from you. I see how beautiful and handsome you all are. I can see you, how nice you look. And that's pretty much of it. And it looks like a L'Dor Va-Dor. Is that background a mural?
I think he's talking to you, Joel.
No, it's to you. No, the mural behind you, the mountains.
Oh, that's just a Zoom background for North
It's a
Carolina.
beautiful background, beautiful. But I had a feeling it wasn't real now because it's getting dark out. But I would have believed it a few hours ago.
Well, actually not. It won't get dark until after 9 o'clock here. Yep.
Oh, good. Okay, well, it looks beautiful.
You look careful with Loring. He's very skeptical about things. So he won't believe things unless you have evidence.
You like the expression, people say, I believe it when I see it, but I think it turned around. You'll see it when you believe it.
Anybody want to share some thoughts on any of the about the Torah reading, or should we move on to other matters?
Well, I think we're privileged tonight, not only to have some of our members here who haven't been with us for a while. Welcome, Stacy. I'm not sure who Jean is, but welcome. And welcome to Craig Goldenfarb, who has blessed us with some sponsorships a couple of times. And I'm thrilled to have him as part of this evening.
Well, not only a sponsorship, Craig actually has an entire staff working on nothing but giving to the community and making charitable donations to really good causes. So he called me up and he said, what do I do if I want to make a donation for Surfside? So I said, well, we can take care of that and we can make sure it gets to the right place. And Craig and I have been friends for a long time, and I really appreciate people who have really great skill and expertise in what they do, and they use that in order to give back and help the community. So he's certainly a friend of L'Dor Va-Dor and a friend of our community. So I asked
Ma'asim Tovim, a doer of good deeds.
I asked Craig if he would come on and maybe share a few words, and I'd like him to maybe let us know a little bit about the charitable work that he does, and maybe that'll encourage other people, other professionals, to also do the same thing and give back a little bit like he's doing. Craig, would you like to share a little bit about what you're doing and what's happening with Surfside?
You can unmute yourself, Greg.
Great. Thank you both rabbis for hosting me. Wonderful. So yeah, I think there's a phrase that I really like, which is with great power comes great responsibility. Now, I don't know if that was from a Marvel movie or from the Bible, probably from a Marvel movie. And I take it seriously, that phrase, whether it was said by, Thor or Captain America. I don't recall.
I think it was Wonder Woman, that Israeli actress, Gal Gadot. I think she's the one who said it.
So I have a pretty decent sized law firm here in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I'm blessed with having 80 people and 10 lawyers who work with me that are absolutely tremendous human beings. And with that power comes great responsibility. So to me, the responsibility that comes with that power is to support so many different sectors of Palm Beach County in charitable work, and I'm working for boards of various charities. And I have my own charity that I started kind of randomly, where we give away defibrillators, those things that save you if you're having a heart attack, to sports organizations. So that's one of the things that I do, is I started a charity. And we saved many lives, because if you get someone with a defibrillator when there's someone having a heart attack, within 3 minutes, they're going to live. So it's really cool. And I started that charity, and then becoming involved with wonderful organizations like Barry, and so many different sectors of society. I think the great responsibility that I've taken on is that I love to support good causes. And there's so many good causes around, and that's what I do. And that often comes with the responsibility of supporting causes where a tragedy has occurred. And because I'm a personal injury attorney, I've dealt for 25 years now with single casualty events, mass casualty events, and tragedies of so many sorts. And the sad part is that with the life and death process, we usually have the luxury of saying goodbye, or some slow process involving health. But in a mass casualty event or a car accident or something, it's sudden and unexpected. And a sudden and unexpected tragedy multiplies the grief multiple times. And it's so hard, because when someone's taken from you quickly, you don't have the time to prepare. And that's what I do for a living, is I help deal with the not only grief, but with the sudden and unexpected nature of such grief. And that's sad. And it's funny you mentioned Deuteronomy, because when I read up on Deuteronomy, I thought that the phrase, justice, justice, thou shalt pursue, may have been in Deuteronomy. I'm not sure. Rabbis, could you correct me on that if I'm incorrect?
Yeah, it is in Deuteronomy. Yes,
it's in Deuteronomy. So that to me is a calling as an attorney. It's straight from the topic from your Torah portion, is from the book of Deuteronomy. So I thought that was rather interesting that was the choice of Torah portion tonight. I have that on my wall in my office. Justice, justice, thou shalt pursue. And that's a guiding light for me in my career. Beautiful. So I had the honor, I guess the sad honor, of traveling down to Miami to the site 2 weeks ago. And I spoke with CNN, and I spoke with CBS and NBC about some of the issues involved in a mass casualty event such as this. And I found the same questions kept coming up from the reporters, which is, what is justice? And as you may or may not know, if you have any involvement in the justice system, I like to clarify that there are two forms of justice in the United States. And one is the criminal justice system, and one is the civil justice system. And when I had the opportunity to talk to a couple families who had lost a loved one. And really their first thought was, who's going to go to prison? And I had to say honestly that in America, for something that's negligent, or even if it's pretty badly negligent, like ignoring a report from 2018 that said your building's going to fall down, that doesn't raise to the level of a crime. So a lot of people see justice as someone going to jail, and especially when you've lost a loved one. But the other form of justice in America is called the civil justice system, which is different. And the civil justice system, the only thing you can get is some sort of compensation for the pain and suffering you've been through. And I like to teach that to people, because it's really unclear, guilty versus not guilty, libel versus not libel. These are all legal terms, but they have very different meanings. Guilty means you're going to jail. Libel means you have to pay money. Two very different systems. So I had to look at some families in the eye who lost a loved one and say it's very unlikely that anyone's going to prison for what occurred, yet they may face repercussions in the civil justice system. And that's the system I'm involved in. as a personal injury attorney. So as I was speaking to the reporters and I didn't get to talk to Wolf Blitzer, which I'd like to do because he was on this story. He's a hero of mine, sort of. I like him as a reporter, and he was down there, but I got to answer a lot of questions about what was going to happen and who was at fault and who's responsible. And what always goes through my head just as a human being is that, my system is imperfect because all it can do is some financial justice. You can't bring back your loved one. But does financial justice really do the trick? And I don't know. The answer is interesting because some people get closure from financial justice. Some people get closure from seeing someone go to jail. But the system I work in is just financial justice. That's what I call it. So a lot of questions were asked for people who live in condominiums. What on earth can you do if you live in a condo? And what we discovered was that there are basically no laws that require disclosure to tenants. There's no laws that require disclosure of dangerous defects to tenants in Florida. All you have to really disclose to someone who's buying a condo is the bylaws of the condo, and you have to disclose whether there's going to be any assessments that are going to be taxed upon you when you buy it. Really, really basic stuff. And that's throughout all of Florida. That's kind of sad. So one of the things that I'm going to help work on is to change the legislation in Florida, to change the requirements, to make more stringent building code requirements and reporting requirements. Because when you buy a condo in a high rise, shouldn't you have the right to know if there was a report 3 years ago that says this building's in danger of falling? I mean, I would think that's a basic right when you buy a place, to at least have access to that information. So the questions I was asked by grieving family members were particularly sad, but particularly telling as to the emotional process of grief, which I've dealt with for many years. And as religious leaders, rabbis, you deal with grief, you deal with all kinds of different emotions and different things that occur for your congregates. And I'm in a specific area where I deal specifically with grief and trauma. So I'm certainly not a religious figure of any sort, but it is an interesting job I have because I deal with trauma and grief, much like you guys do. So I just wanted to chat, see if anybody has any questions. I unfortunately now know more about condo law and collapsed buildings than I'd like to know from this tragedy. But I do find that it is interesting to people to look at the justice aspect when such an event occurs. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if any come up.
Great. Let me ask you, Craig, are you handling any of the cases at that building?
I'm not, although because I've done so much TV work with the stations, yeah. I am getting pretty well known in this, and I suspect that of the 160 victims that I tend to pick up a few as people shift from grieving to anger, which is part of the grieving process in situations like this. When you find out there's some accountability that needs to occur, you shift, your brain shifts from just grief to grief and anger and holding people responsible. So it was June 24th. So that was, that was about 3 weeks ago, a month ago. So I suspect that people are going to really start to look at the anger portion of this at some point.
Let me ask you, from the spiritual standpoint, I have a couple of questions to pose to all of you who are witnessing from a spiritual point of view. I was in that building April 29th for a funeral service. I was downstairs in the social hall. They invited quite a few people from the building to pay respects to a doctor who had just moved in with his, at the time, girlfriend at the time, and Nancy, I'm not going to picture names. So he moved in, and we did the service for him. We went to the ocean between us, cremation, and we went back up to the house for the shiva. But the question I want to pose you, and I pose a lot of people throughout as a rabbi, particularly elderly people, what is it? I mean, is it, people say, well, it's in God's hands. Our Bubbies say it's in God's hands, but share it. And, when it's your time, it's your time. And what percentage of your life are you controlling? I mean, are we hedging our bets to eat health food and not have a heart attack, God forbid, or get a disease? But yet on the other hand, we could walk down the street and the car could skip the curb, or we could be in a building collapses. Like bridge, what was that? The Bridge Over Sand. What was that book called where people walked across the bridge and it just happened to be the bridge collapsed? But I'm asking you, as fellow Jews or fellow spiritual people, what percentage of our life are we really controlling? And also, how do you explain that, that something that would happen at that exact moment, someone came in off a plane at 10:30 and the building collapsed a couple hours later. Some people left the building and weren't there. What is your opinion? Do you feel it's b'sheret? Do you think it's in God's hands? What percentage of your life are you controlling? I'm asking you, is it God? Is it nature? What is it? Let's turn it over to her.
Well, if it's in God's hands, he's not doing a very good job of supervising. I mean, there's disasters and catastrophes and people dying prematurely and Holocaust and pogroms all over the place. So it seems pretty clear there's no supervisor. But sometimes, when you're a little kid, you're 3, 4 years old, you feel overwhelmed. And it's kind of nice to think that your parents are in control and they know what they're doing. Because if you didn't, you'd feel really scared. So if you think, hey, my parents are in control, it makes it feel good. And then some people, when they get older, they want to feel that there's a parent in the sky who's watching out for them because it takes the responsibility away and they feel a little better thinking that somebody's watching out. And even if something looks bad, there's some other reason, so it's okay. And the Orthodox have an expression in Kabbalah, Gam ze l'tova. This too is for the good. It's like, doesn't matter what happens, somebody's watching out. But I have found in my studies and other people, historians have found that those people who decide to take matters into their own hands and not wait around for God to do it, those people are successful people. Those people make a difference. And, when the state of Israel was founded, the Orthodox said, you can't do this. God's supposed to send his Messiah and then he'll establish Israel. And while they were talking and telling them not to do it, pretty much secular Jews and humanist Jews took matters into their own hands and they said, we're not waiting. We're doing this. We're going to take control now. And like Craig was saying, if people said, well, you know what, I'll just leave it in God's hands as far as whether this building is going to fall down or not, that would be rather foolhardy. You're better off enacting laws like Craig is doing and finding people who know what they're doing and looking out for yourself. Because if you're going to wait around for God to do it, you might have a long wait. I also did want to mention something about what Craig was talking about. I also do personal injury, but actually not anymore. I give my cases away to people who know what they're doing, like Craig, because I have other things that I work on, and he's definitely a specialist in this area. And even if they speak different languages, he's got somebody in his office who speaks that language too. But I just wanted to mention that when people suffer a tragedy, a lot of times what they do, I've handled a lot of personal injury cases where people get a recovery and they take some of that recovery and they donate it to a good cause, or they start an organization, or they commit themselves to working on something in memory of their loved ones so they can channel some of that grief into the alleviation of grief and suffering for other people. So if Craig comes along and gets you $1 million, you could take some of that money and use it for a noble, worthy purpose. And that's really what we're all about. It's trying to help people get some compensation. But also what Craig was saying also brings up something about the unpredictability of life. You don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so therefore, you need to live your life in the present. You have to plan for the future, but you don't want to think, you know what, I kind of want to tell my parents I love them, but I don't need to do it today. I'll wait around until the time is right. You should never live on someday I'll. Someday I'll do all these things that I thought about doing. Don't live on someday I'll, because you don't know if that someday is ever going to occur. And because of what Craig does and because of what rabbis do, we know you don't want to do that. You want to get things done now and do things in the present. I'll just mention one other thing. And I'd really like to hear Norm's opinion on this, if he would like to comment. I know this is a very touchy subject, but the great Nobel Prize winner and Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel, he said that when the Nazis were threatening and things looked really bad, a lot of Jewish people prayed to God. And he mentioned in his community, people were praying to God for help. Instead of taking action to protect themselves, to flee, to fight, to do it, they were just praying. And he said while they were praying, Nazis came in and wiped them out. But there were other people that decided to fight or to flee, and those people had a better chance of survival. So he was really, the lesson that he learned from the Holocaust is not to pray to God for deliverance, but rather to do what you need to do to try to protect yourself. Now, during the Holocaust, sadly, for most people, it didn't really matter what they did. They were facing overwhelming, horrific odds, and there wasn't a whole lot they could do. But one of the lessons that he learned was that praying to God is not a good idea. And a lot of people after the Holocaust became atheists or didn't believe in God anymore, which is why at L'Dor Va-Dor, we try to come up with a rational view of God that people can relate to. A God, a type of belief in a power greater than ourselves that makes sense. And that's not going to divert our attention away from what we need to do to take care of ourselves. I would, Norma, maybe you would want to weigh in on this. I'd be curious to hear your response to what Elie Wiesel was saying, if you'd want to comment on this, or Deuteronomy, or maybe you have a comment on personal injury law. If you'd like to give us some of your advice on what to do if you get into an accident. Norman, it's all yours.
Well, I would take under consideration what the Jewish people have done in the ghetto of Warsaw, Vilna, Białystok. They really, of course, most of them perished. I'm not going to use the word perished, they were murdered. But they had proven that Jews do not go like sheep to a slaughter. Of course, it was an overpowering might of the Nazis. You cannot possibly imagine physically today that I am seeking answers and I cannot find them. Why and how can people, for instance, murder all day as it happened on November the 3rd of 1943, that 43,000 Jewish people were killed in a day. They eliminated Majdanek, Trebniki, Poniatovo, and the footpaths in one day. But people who went into the gas chambers had on their lips one thing, the Shema. We did believe. I still am asking, did you lose any faith? Absolutely not. To me, I would say that that word Bashir means so much. I am not under illusion. Now, there were people much stronger than I, much wiser than I, and yet they did not make it. So I believe very strongly in Bashir. It was meant to be, but I am alive. Of course, I have 126 names of my family whom I control. But for the love of God, I remained alive. But I have a big job ahead of me to teach the young people so this catastrophe does not repeat itself. We're going to places like Sebastian, Belgrade, and out of the area here of out of Boca Raton, that people subsequently somehow or other they sit and the Holocaust comes up. But where we're going, my organization, and we produce speakers to schools, they don't even know how to spell the word of Holocaust. And this is our aim in life. I owe a debt to those whose voices have been silenced. And this is my aim in life. I am over 90 years old. I don't know how long the Almighty is going to allow me to live yet. But while my eyes are open, my body is not functioning, but my mind, thanks the Lord, is still here. I don't know for how long, but this is what we all should do. This is our absolute necessity of the Jewish people to make sure, because yesterday it was against the Jews. Today it could be against the Christians, tomorrow Muslims and Buddhists. Every one organized religion is really exposed to that. And it is our responsibility as living witnesses to prove who we are and what we are. I am proud. I really am proud to be a Jew. And whether I'm asked, do you believe? 100%. I am a believer, and whatever has happened, in my eyes personally, it's bashert.
Norman, let me ask you, Norman.
Yes.
Generally speaking, when I serve nursing homes, retirement homes, and convalescent homes, and so on, and I ask people there who are usually in their 90s or even more, what percentage of your life have you controlled? And you know what most of them do? They go like this. 0.
You couldn't. Just imagine that I was 10 years old when it started. So what voice did I have that would influence others to follow my thoughts? I had none. I was a child. And by the way, I must share with you that I was bar mitzvah in Auschwitz, being with a group of educators from Palm Beach County, Rabbi Howard Shapiro, who's probably some of you know. I was 73 years old when I was bar mitzvah about 2 miles from the camp. There is a synagogue in Auschwitz that has been really has been renovated by the L'Dor Foundation. And mine was the first bar mitzvah there after the Holocaust.
Beautiful.
Am I a Jew? Absolutely. Am I proud of it? Absolutely. Yes. And as I said, all of us owe a debt to those who have been murdered. You know, and there were 5 million others. Yes. For different reasons. They must have been criminal, political, no matter what. They maybe had a chance to be liberated or not. For us, our die was cast. We Jews, we have to disappear of the face of the earth. But we had proven different. And I believe that with the ashes of the Holocaust, the country of Israel was created.
It was a
child in Poland. I was born in Warsaw. 1,000,001 times I heard my friends, hey, Jew, go to Palestine. Yes, we have reached that point. We're going, but to our holy place of Israel, Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh.
Beautiful. You know, Norman, you said something that was very interesting, that when the Jews were being led to the gas chambers, and there's countless of our ancestors, they said the Shema.
Absolutely.
And what's so special about the Shema? It's just it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one." I mean, but no one ever translates the word Israel, which means one who strives and struggles to comprehend the ways of God. And that's what it means.
On my way from the Umschlagplatz, when I arrived in Majdanek, I was with a person who was much, much older than I, a religious person. And he decided he said the vidui. You know what that is, I'm sure. A vida, that's the prayer of the people who are going to die, because we were aware already what was happening in Treblinka. 360,000 Jews out of the Warsaw Ghetto were murdered there in no time at all. We knew about it. And the survival I really, my conscience sometimes bothered me. How come that I survived and my people around me did not? And again, I must stress the word
Share.
share. And this is what I live by until my eyes are closed. My function is I belong to the child survivors, hidden children of the Holocaust of Palm Beach County, of which I had really an honor to be the president of. And we're going around to school and we're cooperating, but we're going outside everywhere. Whoever needs us, we're sending a speaker there for them to know that there was a Holocaust, what it was all about, and what, excuse me, what we had to suffer as Jewish people.
I would like to thank Norman for your incredible work in preserving the memory of the Holocaust, because as you say, so many kids and people don't know about it. You're doing an incredible job, and you're doing it for a very long time, and having your bar mitzvah is an inspiration to show that they might have been able to try to confine you and try to stamp Judaism out of you, but it didn't work. You stayed strong in your Judaism, and you're a real credit to our society, and you're welcome anytime at L'Dor Va-Dor. I don't know how many years you have left.
I have been to Washington.
I also,
I have been to Washington, D.C. with your president, Sandy Lopato.
Yes, I'm aware of that. That's great. I also just want to share with you that there are people who think that the Holocaust was part of a plan to get the Jews into Israel, that the Holocaust was part of God's plan to have the Jews return to Israel, because the countries of the world recognize for a brief minute that the Jews need a safe haven. But there's a lot of Holocaust survivors who find that concept obscene, to suggest that God would orchestrate the mass murder of 6 million Jews and the suffering of so many people in order to establish Israel. There had to have been a better plan than that. So a lot of Jewish people, a lot of survivors reject that. I would just say this also, that when it comes to the Holocaust, if we don't try to figure out why it happened, then it'll keep on happening. If we just say, well, you know, that's just Bashert, or that's just everybody succumbs, or you can't really tell, there's no rhyme or reason, or every religion is at risk. If we don't analyze what happened and understand it, we don't know our history, we'll be doomed to repeat it. And fortunately, let me just finish the thought. Let me just finish this thought, then you can ask me a question. Human beings are endowed by natural selection, I believe, not by any divine supervisor, but by natural selection. We're endowed with the greatest gift, the human mind. The human mind allows us to understand, to analyze, and to figure out why something happened, not by saying it was God's will, but by understanding the real causes of it. When we do that, we're able to learn from that and to fix it next time. For instance, Jewish suffering, it's happened for 2,000 years. It is not, there's no other religion that can rival the amount of persecution of Jews, because Christianity and Islam both teach replacement theology, that God had a covenant with us and now we blew it, and now the covenant's with them, and we're targeted in their holy scriptures. So killing Jews is something that their Bible tells them to do. If we don't combat that, we don't challenge that idea, then we're going to just keep having over and over Holocaust, pogroms, inquisitions, crusades, ghettos, and we'll never know what's going on. We'll just say, hey, I guess it's just, who knows why? They just don't like us. That type of thinking condemns us to repeat the past over and over. I'll also say one other thing that Norman said that I really salute for mentioning this is the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto and other ghettos taught the world that there are ways that you can be victorious even when the odds are against you. And those people were victorious, even though they didn't win the battle, they were victorious. As Norman says, there are times when we cannot prevent an injustice. The odds are too overwhelming against us. But as Elie Wiesel said, there are times we can't prevent an injustice, but there should never be a time when we don't protest against it. And that's one thing also that Craig does. He knows that you can't prevent injustice, but you can protest, challenge it, and fight against it, and try to bring justice about after that happens. Go ahead, Loring. Tell me, what did you want to share?
No, I was just going to say, you touched on it also. I mean, you say that if we don't teach about the past injustices towards Judaism to Jews, but we do it every Passover. We teach it every year. We've seen it happen in Spanish Inquisition, the Russian pogroms, Nazi Germany. I mean, it can happen again. And on one hand, it might not have much to do with our standing up as Jews, but I think a lot has to do with protecting the Jewish people is the fact that there is a state of Israel. I think that is a really huge safe haven for Jewish people, God forbid, in case something should happen. I use the word God forbid, again, it's God. If we don't like the word God, then you can make any other word. You can say nature, you can say the universe, or you can say b'sheret. It's, whatever. It's like no one has control. We're not leading the parade. We are just going along and doing the best we can to, quote, hedge our bests, to take care of ourselves, to live a righteous life, to do what we feel is best in handling all of our situations in life, and to continue on being good people.
Loring, I'm going to disagree with you on that point. I don't think Judaism is doing a good job at all in standing up for ourselves and defending ourselves. I think we're doing a horrible job. When the Passion of the Christ came out, a movie that is viciously anti-Semitic, that portrays Jews as money grubbers who killed Jesus and reveled and gloried in it. You can't watch that movie without hating Jewish people the way the Jews are portrayed by an anti-Semite Mel Gibson. When that movie came out, and many people were protesting, including me, and I said, you have to teach that this movie is anti-Semitic because it's directly quoting anti-Semitism in Christian scripture. The ADL told me, you cannot say that. You cannot criticize Christianity. You cannot say that this movie is based on Christian scripture. That would be against our interfaith efforts. And the teaching of the Holocaust now, I've seen the curriculum, I've talked to teachers, I know it's taught. Very rarely do they go into the Christian anti-Semitism that produced it. Right now as we speak, that movie, Passion of the Christ, is being shown to tens of millions of Christian kids, indoctrinating them to hate Jews as Christ killers, right now as we speak. And there's not a peep from the Jewish community challenging that movie, challenging Christian scripture. Instead, oh no, believe whatever you want. If that's your Bible, fine, believe it. That's condemning your kids and my kids. The more anti-Semitism, more pogroms, more crusades, more Holocaust. Because these kids are being taught right now that the Jews are of the devil. The 2 synagogue shootings in 2019 were both the result of people quoting Christian scripture who went into a synagogue, said, you Jews are of the devil. And if you don't challenge that idea, then we're not standing up for ourselves. And I think it's high time that we did.
Rabbi, this is what I was known by.
Ooh. Oh my.
I didn't have a name.
Oh man.
I was given a number and I was dehumanized right there. This is a living witness to what I.
Is that your actual outfit?
That's my actual outfit. I got it in Buchenwald in 1944. Being transferred already after the Warsaw Ghetto, after Majdanek, Skarżysko, Buchenwald, Schlieben, and the Death March. But this is what I say at Bashir. A lot of people around me were murdered. What do you do with a man that kills all day and then he comes to hug his own family, his own children? How can your mind really function and think that these things are possible? There are no answers to it. There are no answers.
There is an answer. If you teach your children that the Jews killed Christ and they're of the devil and they've committed the worst crime in history, that then causes people to be deluded enough to think that they deserve death. That's the answer. That's the answer.
Remember that I went into a concentration camp from a country that already hated me.
Yeah, I know.
I was not loved before the Germans even entered the country of Poland. They put a restriction on kosher slaughter, and people were religious in Poland. They had nothing to eat, basically, because you were not supposed to kill them in a ritual manner. So when you come out of your mother's womb as an anti-Semite, you don't change overnight. That stays with you. And children, when they're 4 or 5 years old, they live with each other. There's no problem until the grown-ups kick in and start hating them and start giving them the infusion of hatred.
Barry, there is a group, and I'd like everybody to look into this. It's called Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. It's formed by a Christian group. Florida students, they just read this from the Orlando Sun-Sentinel. Florida students must learn undiluted truth about the Holocaust. They are saying that the regular school system is not teaching the truth about the Holocaust, and she's standing up with other Christians to stand up for the rights of Jews. It's a beautiful organization, Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. Lori Cardoza Moore, just for you to know.
Our textbooks in the public schools teach that as historical fact that the Jews killed Jesus. And when I filed a lawsuit challenging that, the school board responded, "We're just teaching facts. You can't challenge that." And the judges agreed with that. They're actually teaching as an historical fact that the Jews killed Jesus. And they also say as a fact, historical fact, they do it because they were worried about their money and power. Jesus threatened their money and power. This is outrageous. And Norman, what you said is so true. Hitler was anti-Semitic because he knew he had a continent that had been softened up by 2,000 years of anti-Semitism, especially in Poland. So when he walked into Poland, many of them embraced him and said, "Thank you. We've been waiting to do this to the Jewish population for years." Now, there were many, many, many righteous Gentiles, many, many Christians who protected Jews and fought for Jews and resisted it. But the ideology throughout Christian Europe was like kindling wood for a guy who would come over and light the match. And that's what we have to change.
Germans would not have been capable of doing all this job without their collaborations.
Of course.
Look what we are finding now in Belarus, all the mass graves. And they were Lithuanians, Latvians, Estonians. They were all born hating the Jewish person. And their aim in life, they were blessed with Germany coming in and doing the job on us.
That's right. And
let me ask you, Norman, and I pose this question. It's in addition to being anti-Semitic, let's just suppose that you were in the government of Germany or wherever it might be, and you were given the carte blanche to go in and to murder Jews. And what is the reward? The reward is you get to take over their home, their cars, their stocks, their bonds, their artwork. I mean, it was a wholesale robbery.
These were financial rewards. They had inner rewards. Hey, we got rid of enemy who killed our leader, our Jesus and all that. Look at all this here with us kidnapping children to get the blood to make our matzahs. Now, is this nonsense? Absolutely. But you tell it to a 15, 16-year-old, he carries it on throughout his life. And the beginning, the seed of hatred is done already there.
That's right.
And,
It's been planted in them since birth because of their religious indoctrination. And the countries that collaborated with Hitler were pretty much Christian and Catholic, and the Catholic Church was the first entity to recognize the Nazi government, and they celebrated Hitler's birthday, and Hitler was never excommunicated. The only Nazi who was ever excommunicated was Goebbels, not for killing Jews, but because he married a Protestant. So that's what we're dealing with, my friends. This is historical fact that we're dealing with. And we as a Jewish community sit back and say, well, you know, everybody's entitled to believe whatever they want. Who am I to challenge? I challenge their Bible. I challenge the Quran that says to kill the non-believer. And I challenge Jewish scripture in which God orders genocide. And the only solution to all of it is what we're doing at L'Dor Va-Dor, in my opinion. That's a rational approach to religion. You need to approach it rationally.
We have families in the Baltic countries, and they were born already with a seed of hatred against us.
Right.
And unfortunately, the price we have paid is unheard of in the history of mankind. But we have to do something now to prevent future happenings like that. These are catastrophic events, and we must not really. My generation is dying out. I don't know how much longer I can do it, but as long as my eyes are open, I have sworn that I owe and pledge really to those who were silenced. And this is what we're doing now.
Norman, you are an inspiration to us all, and thank you for continuing to speak. Does anyone else want to share some thoughts? Craig, do you have any thoughts on all of this? Or anybody else? Anybody want to share some thoughts about what we've touched upon?
And by the way, let me tell you that Palm Beach County has a very extensive problem in the school system, teaching the happenings, the history of the Holocaust. They're very, very active with it. And with God's help, we can help them out as best we can.
You are correct.
They're working.
Anybody else?
I have to join my family for dinner. I apologize. But I wanted to thank you all for letting me speak on some civil justice issues and for allowing me to help any cause that you want, Barry, because I'm 100% behind everything you do. It's just lovely to have you in my community.
Craig, before you go, I just want to say one other thing about Craig, because my yarmulke is off to him. I would just say this. Craig doesn't hesitate to get involved in social issues, political issues, whatever it is, and he doesn't hold off when it comes to fighting for justice in any arena. He's there. And I really appreciate that, because if we want to make real changes and protect the planet, we need to, we're being assaulted. And it's good to know that Craig's on our side, not just in the law, but in the world of government and politics. He's out there fighting the good fight for Jewish ideals. And I appreciate that. Enjoy dinner with your family, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Craig. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Thank
Rachel,
you so much.
Rachel, I know your hand was raised for quite a while. I'm sorry. No? Okay. So I guess, does anybody else want to add any further comments? I think we've probably run the gamut here. So with that, I think we will
Let's do it
close
again.
off tonight and say shalom to everyone.